All right, let's talk shoes for the Colorado Trail. For my Colorado Trail FKT that I attempted, I wanted to have the best footwear system I could possibly put together. Foot health and comfort is one of the most critical details to get it right. If your feet hurt, if they're covered in blisters, if they start looking similar to Hamburger Helper, you're not going to have a great time out there. The Colorado Trail is almost 500 miles long, and I started out with a fairly heavy 40-pound backpack. I wasn't going to be taking a resupply anywhere on the trail, so the shoes I started with would have to be the shoes I finished with. And I was going for a record, so the shoes and my feet had to make it to the end in as good condition as possible so that I could continue to hike as fast as possible to the very end. So I decided to put together my dream La Sportiva shoe system to support my feet and my foot health. And here's what I came up with. Maybe you can use some of these strategies for your own long distance, fast and light backpacking adventures. So first off, I wanted a lightweight shoe. Too heavy a shoe is just going to be a slow shoe. So a bomb-proof high-top boot may make it to the finish intact, but I'm just not sure how quickly. A good shoe for this challenge is going to have to be lightweight to complement the rest of my lightweight kit. In general, the lighter you kit, the less energy you're going to use getting anywhere, and ultimately, the quicker you'll move across the terrain. And I'd use trail and mountain running shoes from La Sportiva for long-distance trips, like my Tour de 14er, my Tour of the Highest 100, as well as for projects like my Nolan's 14 runs, and long-distance ridge runs of the Sangres, the 10-mile range, front ranges. They certainly worked well for me. So one big factor is comfort. Shoes have to be comfortable. Self-explanatory, right? Why wear an uncomfortable shoe for 20 hours plus a day? But it also has to be comfortable to wear while your foot swells. You'll want to pick out a shoe with a generous foot box so that your foot still fits in the shoe when it grows a bit. A strategy some people adopt is that they start with a slightly larger shoe than they normally wear. It's a good idea. A softer midsole is another way to up the comfort of your shoe. Thick midsole will insulate you from rocks and debris on the trail. I don't necessarily like a max cushion shoe, as I do prefer at least a little ground feel. Durability. You want to have a durable shoe. Since I can only bring one shoe for the entire trip, this one shoe has to make it from the beginning in Durango to the end in Waterton Canyon. The upper cannot fall apart. The midsole can't crush out, and the outsole can't wear too thin, leaving me with nubbins for lugs, or even getting so bad that the midsole is exposed. Conditions appropriate. Is the shoe weather resistant enough? Can I hike in the rain or even in the snow without hating myself too much? Will it work on the type of trail I'm going to be on? Does it have good enough grip? Does it prevent letting in dirt and sand? So constraints. Since I'm a La Sportiva athlete, I wanted to pick from the La Sportiva mountain running lineup because that's sort of my job. Most every shoe in La Sportiva's lineup would check most of the boxes of what I'm looking for, except for one big requirement. Many of La Sportiva shoes don't have a very wide toe box. La Sportiva instead is known for aggressive mountain running shoes for technical terrain. The Colorado Trail just really isn't all that technical for most of the miles. But I want that wide toe box so that my feet can splay out and so they'll have a bit of extra room if and when they swell, as they often do in these sorts of things. But the La Sportiva does have a few shoes that are attractive to me, namely the Ultra Raptor 2 Wide, the Jackal 2, and the Prodigio. So I've narrowed down my selection to those three shoes, and let's take a look at them. Alright, so the Ultra Raptors. I've never actually tried the wide version. This pair is the normal width version. But I do like the non-wide version I have here, and I've used it often in the past. But there are some marks against it for this project. The shoe is on the heavier side. The outsole wears pretty fast, as it uses the softest and stickiest rubber La Sportiva offers, the Friction White. And the lugs are pretty minimal, exasperating this issue. The drop at 9mm is getting a little steep these days, but the upper is very, very durable. I would categorize this shoe still in the very aggressive shoe for technical terrain category. This is the Jackal 2. Now we're getting pretty close. This is a much less aggressive shoe with a lot less drop, and it has a wider toe box than most other La Sportiva shoes. If you're looking for a wider fit shoe from La Sportiva, I did make a spreadsheet to help you compare all of La Sportiva's mountain running shoes, and I'll link it into the description of this video. When you're shopping around, look for shoes designed around the Tempo Ultra Last. That's the last that the Jackal 2 uses. And this is the shoe that I picked for last year's attempt, and I think it worked pretty well. This year I've also used it while training, having done segments 7 through 1 and, well, this very pair right here. The upper is one of the best parts, being a great balance of durable, light, and breathable. One of my favorites from La Sportiva. The midsole is a little firm, but that's not really a total deal breaker. And the outsole really lasts. Here's a pair I've been using since last year on runs, hikes, and backpacks. There's just not a ton of wear in the outsole lugs. As the shoe to pick for this year, it was really high up there. But there's one more shoe to check out. The Prodigio. This is now La Sportiva's premier long-distance shoe. And it's because of the midsole. The midsole is the standout of the shoe, with its light, voluminous, cushy, nitrogen-infused supercritical foam. And once you wear the Prodigio, it's really hard to go back to any other La Sportiva shoe, including the Jackal 2, when you're thinking long distance. It's all about that midsole. The upper of the Prodigio is minimal, and to be honest, I've had some problems with its durability, mostly when I go off trail. Some of that is cosmetic, like in the front midsole here. You'll see it kind of gets beat up, but some of it's not, like the eyelets getting damaged. The outsole is really race-oriented, light, and performant, but not in a way that I want for a 500-mile hike. And it has smaller profile lugs than I would like for this project, and little windows in the midsole. Those windows can shave a little weight and are stylish, but are a real red flag for me, as it means less surface areas keeping the outsole cemented onto the midsole, and gives an edge for the outsole to be ripped off the midsole. So what did I choose? None of these shoes work perfectly for everything I want, but I can take one of these shoes and customize it for what I want to do. After testing the Jackal 2 and Prodigio all spring and summer, I landed on the Prodigio because I knew how to get around its greatest limitation, the outsole, and take advantage of its greatest strength, the midsole. And how did I do that? By resoling the Prodigio. So as I concluded, the Prodigio's outsole is just too performant for running and racing, and not durable enough for something like the Colorado Trail, which will have a lot of, just walking. 500 miles is about 6,250,000 steps. So having shoes that'll not wear through the outsole was pretty important. Thankfully, the local climbing shoe cobbler, Rock and Resole, will resole running shoes. They do it all the time, mostly to satisfy us crazies who want to climb the Flatirons just to bomb right back down. I would never have thought this to be an option if I hadn't gone to Rock and Resole countless times to get my climbing shoes resoled. I chose the Zagama outsole, although there are other options. The Zagama closely matches the La Sportiva Mutants outsole, which I've always loved. The Zagama uses Vibram Mega Grip compound for its rubber, which are what are on my approach shoes. Pretty sticky stuff. There's also an outsole Vibram has available called the Zegalite. I believe it has a Kevlar reinforced outsole paired with Mega Grip lugs, making it lighter and just as durable, but it'll be more expensive. I didn't quite like the spaces between each separate lugs, so I went with the Zagama. Your taste may vary. So with the Prodigio resoled, I'm seeing way more durability in this outsole, and these lugs are just going to take a lot longer to weather down. I also think that the rubber that wraps in the front of the shoe to protect the upper just looks a lot better. The compromise is going to be a little bit of weight added to the shoes, and that extra cost to resole the shoe, which came to about $70. Along with the resole, I decided to reinforce some parts of the upper. So as I said, the Prodigio has a very lightweight, extremely breathable upper, but it's not as durable as some of the other mountain running shoes La Sportiva offers, and I was starting to get cuts and abrasions in my initial pair. So before the trip, I made sure to cover some of the upper with my favorite accessory, good old seam grip. Seam grip in this application will be used to reinforce the material in the upper. The Prodigio has sort of this faux rand around the toe box, which I think is a great design, and I love the nod to climbing shoe design. I extended the protection of the ram inwards towards the center of the shoe, as I was starting to get cuts and tears on the side of my shoes, especially near the vulnerable ollie patch near the little toe. You don't want to cover all this mesh material, as breathability is a really good thing in the upper, but we don't want the mesh to have an untimely death scraping against the wrong rock. Just clean your shoes as well as you can before applying. I use some alcohol in a rag and just scrub the shoes a little bit, then let dry before applying the seam grip. I did put a thin, and the operative word is thin, film on this faux rand itself, as well on this exposed midsole in the front here. As you can see from my initial pair, this part of the midsole just gets beat up cosmetically. Finally, I very carefully added a bit of seam grip into the eyelets of the shoe to help counteract the laces from sawing through the eyelets themselves. I applied the seam grip just in the inside using a toothpick to stick it in the eyelet itself. Just make certain you're not gluing the eyelet shut. I was searching for a way to add just a little bit more comfort and protection to the shoe underfoot. I was also experiencing a little bit of a hot spot near the ball of my foot, and that spells to me blister. I've never really used insoles before except for a DIY rock plate I've added into shoes in the past. So I popped in a pair of these Superfeet green. And these are made of a more dense material that doesn't crush out as easily as the Ortholite sock liner that comes with the Prodigio. When those Superfeet were added, there definitely was a different feel to my shoes underneath my foot, which I definitely preferred. Also, that hot spot went away. And as an additional benefit, this Superfeet insole doesn't absorb water as easily as the Ortholite sock liner, making these shoes dry out faster, leading to less of a chance to actually experience blisters. I was also experiencing a problem other Prodigio users are having in the ankle area. There's a sharp, rigid piece of plastic that runs below the ankle, which can come in contact with my foot just below my own lateral malleolus of my fibula. Adding the insole raises the footbed just enough where this stops being an issue. If you're having a similar problem with your Prodigios, give this idea of adding an insole a try. So another really minor modification I did to the Prodigio was change up the lacing pattern. While using the Prodigio for general running and some overnight trips, I found that one of the eyelets put a lot of pressure on one of the bones of my foot. Maybe like my first metatarsal of my big toe. So I tweaked the lacing pattern just to skip that eyelet. And as an added benefit, that makes sure the upper and the toe box is never constricted. For my foot, this worked really well and wasn't sloppy at all. I also experimented with using the lace locks, but I usually warn people on using lace locks themselves, unless there's really no other option. It might be more of a sign that the heel is just too wide for you. The danger is that you'll put too much pressure on the top of your foot below the ankle, causing some really painful bruising that takes a while to really heal. So takeaway is to play with your lacing pattern. There's no real reason that the default lacing is going to be best for you. And as I usually do, I swapped out the laces ahead of time. I found the laces that La Sportiva mountain running shoes come with are just not as durable as really any aftermarket laces I can find. These are just some round shoe laces with a slightly greater diameter than what comes with the shoe. So those are the modifications I made to the Prodigio to make them my dream Colorado Trail shoe. Let's now talk about the rest of this system. So for the Colorado Trail, I added Gaiters. Getting dirt, sand, and small rocks in your shoes from the top opening is pretty annoying, especially since it forces you to stop and dump out what got in, wasting valuable time. And Gaiters make sense as a solution to stop all that crap from getting in. So for my research, Dirty Girl Gaiters seem to be the best choice. Were the lightest and simplest and seem to have stopped almost anything from getting in. I especially like that the design doesn't rely on a strap that goes underneath the shoe. This doesn't work well for most running shoes, as there's no arch in the outsole for the strap to hang out in and not get cut up from the terrain you're hiking in. You will find this arch in a lot of mountaineering boots or even hiking boots, but not trail running shoes. They do take a minor amount of customization to work with the Prodigio. You'll have to stick on the included Velcro patch on the back of the heel. To wear, slip on the gaiter, put on and tie your shoe, then hook the front of the gaiter to your shoelaces and attach the Velcro on the back. The Dirty Girl Gaiters work perfectly in keeping debris from getting inside my shoe, and as an added benefit, they kept the laces from getting untied, saving me even more time. The Dirty Girl Gaiters come in all sorts of fun colors and patterns. I, of course, chose black. If you don't like the idea of a separate running gaiter, La Sportiva does have a few models that have a running gaiter built in, like these Jackal boas. The boa enclosure is awesome, and I find it really gives a secure fit. This variation of the Jackal 2 comes with the friction white outsoles, rather than the friction red of the lace-ups, which is why I didn't think about using them for the Colorado Trail. So socks were another vital part of the system. Socks do a few things. They keep your foot warm while staying breathable, and they also add just a little bit of cushion around your foot. I chose these quarter-length, darn tough hiking socks that go just above the ankle. It complements the gaiter really well, since they don't stick above them, and the quarter length is just going to be a little lighter than a calf length, saving me just a little bit more weight. Because there's less material, this also means they should dry out just a little bit faster if that's something that needs to be done. I find the thickness up top leads to some cushion and comfort against the upper, which for the Prodigios is pretty minimal. If this was a warmer hike, I may opt for a sock that has a little less cushion on top, and just cushion primarily on the bottom. For a trip like this, I think 2 socks is a good number. You should always have a pair that's clean and dry you're wearing, while having another pair that can be at the ready, already being washed, on its way to be dried. And these are my secret weapons. These are my night pair of socks. And these are the FarPointe Alpha Direct 90 socks. So I find happy feet generally are dry feet. So at night it's best to take off the socks you're wearing to allow them to dry off and let your feet themselves breathe. It's not always warm enough to go sockless at night, so I brought along a very lightweight, very breathable pair of socks just to sleep in. These Alpha Direct 90 socks keep my feet warm and are very light at only 25 grams for the pair and are incredibly breathable, so I wake up with dry feet and my sleeping bag doesn't have to come in contact with my dirty, nasty, smelly feet directly. And that keeps my bag itself a little cleaner. Alright, now let's talk about products I use to keep my feet happy and blister free. And the main product I use is just good old Aquaphor. So blisters are a huge, huge issue on the trail, even for someone like me that doesn't normally get blisters all that easily. Blisters happen because of a buildup of friction heat, and the best way to counteract that effect is with prevention. I find that just slathering my feet in Aquaphor before I start out and then reapplying it in some areas where I feel there's a chance of friction has been a winning and easy strategy. And it's just something I do in the morning. I get up, I take off those Alpha Direct socks, I slather some Aquaphor on, I put my hiking sock on. So you can find really small tubes of Aquaphor, but the price is way more expensive for volume than a really big tube. So I take some Aquaphor from the big tube and I transfer it into a small pill bag and double that bag up to stop it from getting everywhere. Not perfect, but it's very lightweight. So that's Aquaphor. I normally don't get blisters, and that's almost all I really need to do. To complement the Aquaphor, I do bring a roll of tape. Tape can help keep the surface of damaged or annoyed skin away from whatever's causing it distress. I normally use tape very sparingly. The tape I've been using is this kind of foamy, cushiony type called Nexcare Absolute Waterproof Tape. You could potentially put it around a blister and reduce the pressure on the blister itself if you wanted. And again, I only use this sparingly, but it's part of my kit. Another thing I bring is oven bags. So we talked about how important it is to keep feet relatively dry, but what happens if it rains or even snows? For that, I bring along some oven bags. So this is an item I actually brought from my winter kit, and I use this when I want to create a vapor barrier. And maybe in a separate video, I'll go over how to create a vapor barrier and why. So for the Colorado Trail, I wasn't expecting temps to get so low that I would need to actually make a vapor barrier, but these are pretty useful just to have like a physical barrier between my shoes and a clean pair of socks and my feet in an attempt to keep my feet from getting soaked. Is this a perfect solution? Not at all, but could buy me some time as a passing storm rolls overhead. So there are waterproof Gore-Tex shoes out there. Why don't I just use those? Well, I generally do not use Gore-Tex shoes in the summertime, or any time the temperature is above freezing. Eventually, the uppers of most any running shoe is going to get wet, and Gore-Tex uppers just take longer to dry out. So oven bags aren't a perfect solution, but they don't weigh all that much, and could prevent a problem from becoming too unmanageable. So that's my footwear and shoe system for the Colorado Trail FKT. In general, I was super happy with everything, especially that Resole. It's definitely not something I'm going to do for every trip, but for something special where I need that extra bit of durability, I'm definitely going to consider it. If I was to do this project again, I may opt to size my shoes just a half size larger to deal with swelling. And these shoes still have a ton of life left into them, and I really can't wait to get out and do some more adventures in them. So that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you got something out of this crazy tour of my shoes, and until I see you again, long may you range.